Hello and welcome to Warlord Games. This week's video we are gonna, review the new Armies of Great Britain book. However, as you all know, I'm no expert, but I thought we'd have a look at it anyway, especially from a newbie. God, I need to put my teeth in already. Newbie's point of view. So I'm not going to be able to give you. I'm not really going to be able to tell you what's good and what isn't. However, we're just going to have a quick look through. Very short video. Quick look through the book, and basically see what looks good from a. It's not really an amateur's point of view, but you know what I mean. So this video. Jesus, I'm doing well so far. This video is basically just going to have a quick look through the book. Main focus really is going to be looking at the new army rules and some of the lists you can build straight out the bat, and really give you an opinion from someone that's starting building army. As you can see, oh, sorry, that's very disrespectful. And basically go from there. And I thought this was probably a good place to start. I have obviously done a quick overview. Oh god, my memory's going. I think the US book or the German book. I think it's the German book. And it was just a quick overview of it. The new army rules that were in there, and it was great to get. I got some feedback, but because I don't have the knowledge, I'll be honest, and I apologise, I wasn't really able to give strategic ideas for people facing different scenarios. Now, if you are a veteran and you do decide to stay and watch, put down in the comments either if I got something wrong, an interpretation of a rule wrong, or what you would use it for, because I think that would really help with the new players if they're watching this video. I do apologise for the desk. It's kind of a bit of a rush one, so it's still very messy, and I haven't been able to get in here again this week. Sheep have taken up my time, and also I'm trying to record 2 videos this week because I'd like one to go out next week as well. However, I've got to move some ram lambs because they're starting to get a little bit frisky, so we've got to move them next week, and that's probably, I would love to say it's going to take me an hour, and in reality it should. However, things always go wrong when moving livestock. Not catastrophically wrong, just they don't go where I want them to go. But anyway, let's crack on. So this is the new book. I do really like the artwork on here. Don't get me wrong, I love the artwork on all the books. I haven't seen the older books, so I do apologise, but from what I've seen so far, the artwork looks really cool. And I love the fact that they focused on the paras, and from all accounts, that's kind of what this book focuses on a bit more. Is, I wouldn't say special forces, well, special forces in real life terms, but I think it definitely focuses more on the paras, commandos, the guards, which I find, having been in the household division myself, yes, I'd love to say we're elite, and I guess we are in some way, but these days the training isn't any different to what everyone else receives in the army. So, but it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, let's get through the book. Right, let's get to the important bits. I obviously didn't put any markers in place to skip to pages, so it's going to be a bit random. I do apologise, but basically, like all the books, you get a bit of history in the book, which I think is really good. I think that sets the scene for the army you're going to build, paint, and play with. And I think it's always good to have a bit of history about the army you're building. You know, we're playing historical miniatures, and I think the history is a big draw for a lot of people, which I think is great. So you know, if you're a big fan of history, bolt action is great to get into. So there are lots of things in this book. It tells you a bit about the Empire, that it wasn't just English, Scottish, Irish and Welsh in there, because at the time the British Empire was one of the biggest. Unfortunately, well, fortunately as well, that didn't last pretty much from the end of the Second World War. I mean, most of the empire were already wanting out at the time, especially India. And as far as I'm aware, the reason the Indian army took part was because there was the promise of independence after. I think we ballsed it up massively, because I think we rushed it. Personally, I think it, as much as people wanted out and stuff like that, I personally think there should have been a lot more input from the Indians themselves, because let's face it, we didn't understand their cultures properly because we thought that we didn't have to, which is a shame. But let's crack on. So let's skip past the history. It tells you a bit of history, as you can see there, about the commandos, the British Army and Commonwealth in general. But yeah, you've got the commandos, the Red Devils, the Paras, which were very new and started in the Second World War. You got a bit about the Chindits, which is great. I do feel, well, you know, the Far East isn't called the Forgotten War for no reason. I don't think the Chindits did particularly well, but they started a concept, didn't they? They were trying to be a self-contained unit that was supplied by the air, but it was all a learning curve on the hoof, effectively. But there we go. So then gets into army lists and the special rules. Let me just move the camera over it so you can see the special rules a bit better. You might not be able to read those, but I'll read them out for you. So the first one is fixed bayonets. The British had very much kept alive the tradition of closing in with the enemy. For every 3 models, irrespective of what armament they carry, in your unit involved in close quarters, you may add an additional die when rolling to damage. These attacks are assumed to come from any of the models in the unit. For example, 4 models would add 1 additional dice. Or die, should I say. It just sounds weird when you say die. To me, that sounds great, because from the start to the end, and as you can see here, on all rifle models, there is the bayonet. Bayonets evolved throughout history, and I think that keeping them on the British, especially the Americans, Japanese, all had them, and I believe the Germans still had them on their rifles, but I would have to double check that, or put down in the comments if you know. But we did have a tradition, sorry, I can't get my words out, I do apologise, a tradition of fixing bayonets, that last sort of hurrah almost, not like the Japanese that were like banzaiing everywhere through the jungle to scare people. The British definitely used it as a last resort, once they'd run out of ammunition, effectively, as a bit of a counter-attack. Not always. They did, especially during the first half and the Battle of France, there were bayonet charges all the time as a bit of a counter-attack to push the enemy back, which, as far as I'm aware, it did work a little bit, but obviously, as we all know, it didn't ultimately win the Battle of France. And it was a little bit, the way the British were doing it in the Battle of France, in my opinion, was a bit of a hangover from the First World War. A lot of officers, senior officers at the time for the Battle of France, were junior officers during the First World War. So they were trying to keep in with the same thinking effectively, which is a bit of a shame. But it, like I said, it did hold off the Germans a little bit to allow people to escape, not just from Dunkirk, but Boulogne and the rescues after. Okay, so the next army special rule is artillery support. British forces were supported by well coordinated gun batteries and were able to call down fire to support an attack or discourage the enemy's advance. When rolling on the artillery barrage table or the smoke barrage table, roll 2 dice and pick the highest result. Now again, I think that's fantastic for the British, because we did from the, after we learned to use artillery a bit better in the First World War, we carried it on into the Second World War, and I think we did use it to great effect. Not always, but guns weren't always available, unfortunately, especially again through the first half of the Second World War. The British Army always the same. We always don't do very well to start with, but very quick to learn. And so using lots of artillery is great, and I am looking forward to using that on the tabletop. So the next one, come on lads. With great professionalism and unflappable stiff upper lip, don't you know, British officers led from the front, often putting themselves in positions of extreme danger. British officers' morale bonus is increased by 1, but any cover save they might receive is reduced by 1. Again, what a fantastic, to me, what a fantastic army special rule. Officers had the highest casualty rate throughout the Second World War, not just for us, but also for the Americans, simply because it's seeing an officer on the battlefield is very easy, but it's great that they still led charges, basically rallied their troops and led charges from the front. As I was saying, this happened a lot through certainly through the first half. There are a lot of stories out there that highlight the fact that officers, as much as you don't always like them because they're not very good, but there are a few, also senior NCOs, there are a few out there that do end up rallying the lads and pulling things back, if not in favour of the British, but at least holding back the enemy. Okay, and the last one there is for King and Country. Certain infantry and artillery units in this book have additional options to represent the different distinct forces of the Guards, Commandos, Airborne and Chindits. A unit entry may contain options to take that unit as one of these forces. If a unit is eligible to be taken in as that force, its unit entry will say so. And this may also enable the unit to take further options not available to a unit ordinarily. Vehicles might also belong to any of these distinct forces, but this makes no difference in rules terms and is normally just a matter of using the right painting scheme. These unit entries have the option for King and Country and then list some or all of the 4 options. Once the option is selected, the following rules and costs each apply. So then it gives you the Guards, Airborne, Commandos and Chindits. So let's go through the Guards one. This rule represents renowned Guards regiments, but can also be used for other storied regiments with a strong sense of regimental tradition dating back hundreds of years. Units must be taken as regular or veteran. Units must be given the following rule for 1 point per man. Iron discipline, Any regular or veteran unit may remove 2 pin markers rather than the usual 1 if an order test is passed. Now, as far as I'm aware, that is pretty good, because if your opponent is putting pin markers on your units, it becomes very hard to use them. Okay, and guards, traditionally, well, as I said, they were a little bit more elite than most infantry regiments, purely because they received better training. However, during the Second World War, I wouldn't have said so much. There were plenty of other regiments within the British Army that were just as steadfast and hard. However, I think this rule, if you're going to take your infantry as guards, regular or veteran, I think this is, even for the extra points, I think, you know, that's going to be a good one to have. Airborne units must be taken as veteran. Units must be upgraded to stubborn for 1 point per man, and an infantry unit other than a medium machine gun, medium mortar or heavy mortar teams may be equipped with well bikes for 1 point per model. I can't really comment on that one really. I mean, veteran is quite a lot of points, I think, depending on what else you're wanting to take in your army list. However, if you're taking a pure airborne army list, that might not be such a bad thing. Now, as you can see there, it doesn't apply to medium machine guns, medium mortar or heavy mortar teams, but please correct me down in the comments below, and we'll also have a look at well bikes a bit later on, just to find out what they are, because I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Commandos. Units must be taken as veteran again. Units must be given the following rules for 3 points per man. That sounds quite a lot. But let me know down in the comments if it's not. Note, the SMGs cost only 3 points if given to commandos. That sounds quite good, I think. I can't remember how many points my guys taking SMGs were. But anyway, we'll have a quick look later on. Given to commandos, tough fighters behind enemy lines. When outflanking, this unit ignores the -1 modifier to the order test for coming onto the table. Now that does sound pretty good. Again, I don't know too much about that, but I would have thought any unit ignoring a -1 modifier to do something is that, I mean, that's pretty good, I would have thought. Independent, if a commando subsection loses its NCO, roll a die. On a roll of 3 or more, another model within the unit is immediately selected to act as the unit's NCO. On the roll of 1 or 2, treat the subsection as having lost its NCO as normal. That's pretty good, because I suppose you're gaining more leadership, I would have thought, which would help with your pin markers. Again, I could be wrong, but that does sound pretty good. Commando machine gun teams, mortar teams, anti-tank teams and flamethrower teams can fire any small arms they carry if the team is not firing the main weapon. Okay, so basically that is pretty obvious. If you have any one of those teams, mortar, medium machine gun, and they're carrying rifles, pistols, submachine guns, if they're not using their main weapon, i.e. heavy machine gun, medium machine gun, mortar, etc., etc., they're basically a smaller normal infantry team. So that I would have thought that's quite good. How much you'll use it, I don't know, because in my eyes I'm thinking that those sorts of teams, maybe bar the flamethrower teams, are going to be staying back a little bit more. But I guess in a bit of a desperate situation, that would really work. Commando HQ teams, machine gun teams, mortar teams, anti-tank teams, sniper teams and flamethrower teams may be given the who dares wins rule. see SAS infantry section unit on page 35, which we will have a quick look at, for 2 points per model to represent SAS units. Don't know how good the SAS are in this. I guess they are pretty tough. I mean, they, you know, when they evolved from the LRDG, is that right? Long Range Desert Group, yeah. They were the, you know, the toughest guy. They were basically recruited from the toughest guys around the British Army. So, you know, I guess they are going to be pretty tough in this. I would have thought so. And finally, the Chindits. Units must be taken as veteran. Again, like a lot of the others, units must be given the following rules for 3 points per man. Behind enemy lines, see commandos. Behind enemy lines, see commandos above. Similar sort of thing to them. So that's the ignores the -1 modifier to the order test for coming onto the table when they're outflanking. Ambush tactics. When deployed on the table, these units may start the game on ambush. That sounds pretty good. Fieldcraft. This applies to light howitzers and light anti-tank guns too, but not to other artillery units. And then have a quick look at the Quartermaster stores. There's Little John adapters in there, which is basically these were extensions which were screwed onto the front of the 2-pounder anti-tank gun. They worked on principle known as squeeze bore, whereby the hard core of the projectile is surrounded by a softer jacket which is removed as it travels through the shrinking diameter of the barrel. This effectively increases the muzzle velocity and aids accuracy and penetrating power. In bolt action, this increases the penetration of the 2-pounder light anti-tank gun, giving it a pen value of +5. However, the gun cannot fire HE. In addition, if you roll a 1, 4 modifiers, when you are rolling to hit, then it breaks and the gun cannot be used for the rest of the game. So that's something to consider when using the smaller tanks and whether you're going to fit the Little John adapters to them. Finally, well bikes. The well bikes were small, relatively lightweight motorcycles designed by the British to be used by the airborne troops to rapidly relocate after a drop. Any airborne unit has the following option. The entire section may be mounted on well bikes, count as bicycles, for 1 point per man. To be honest, that's something new I've learned. Because as far as I'm aware, the books I've read about the Arnhem drop, Operation Market Garden, didn't have well bikes then, but I could be wrong. But there we go. So that's what well bikes are. Vickers K guns. The Vickers K gun was a rapid fire machine gun developed for aircraft, but also favoured by elite ground forces. It counts as a light machine gun, but fires an additional shot, i.e. 5 shots for infantry carried guns and 3 extra shots for vehicle mounted guns. That sounds pretty powerful right there. And demolition charges. A unit may place a demolition charge once per game by taking a fire order. Place a marker 25mm in diameter in base contact with a single man in the firing unit. Once placed, if the placing unit is assaulted by any enemy or destroyed in any way, the marker is removed. So basically, if you're basing down the demolition charge marker and you then get attacked and you all get wiped out, so does a demolition charge. To trigger the charge, the unit must make a run order in a subsequent turn and move at least 3 inches away. This cannot be used to assault an enemy unit, so basically you've got to run back rather than charging an enemy unit. After the run move is complete, the demolition charge immediately explodes with a 3-inch template centered onto the marker. If the marker is placed in contact with a building, when it explodes, treat this as a direct hit by a 3-inch HE weapon against the building and any unit inside. Instead of using the template, if the marker is placed in contact with a vehicle and it explodes before the vehicle moves away, treat this as a direct hit by a 3-inch HE weapon against the vehicle instead of using the template. And you can see there demolition charge, range, no range, shots 1, pen HE, so high explosive, special rules, high explosive, 3-inch, 1 shot. And then basically the rest of the book then is so basically the rest of, well, the main part of the book is basically listing all the units, their points, costs, etc., and just giving you a bit of a brief overview, history overview. Bloody hell, my England is really good today. A brief history overview about them, which I think is really good as well, because again it adds to that. Is immersiveness the right word, or an word? I don't know, but it sounds right, so we're going to go with it. So for example here, Chindit section, I'll read it out for you. Chindit's in the name given to the troop God, terrible. I do apologise today. If you managed to sit through all this video without either falling asleep, turning off, then I congratulate you, because I'm making so many mistakes. But never mind, we shall proceed. Chindits is the name given to the troops under Ord Wingate during the campaigns in Burma in 1943 and 44. Although these formations were not universally composed of elite troops, especially during the later campaign of 44, they include a core of men trained in jungle fighting and survival techniques. The Chindits carried as little heavy gear as possible and were masters of bushcraft, able to move through the jungles and penetrate enemy lines. They relied on airdrop supplies and mules to carry everything they needed in dense jungles that were inaccessible to motor vehicles. They developed a fast hit and run style of warfare, and that was very different from the kind of battles fought elsewhere. Now that's great, you know, it gives you a little overview of what they are, who they were, and what they kind of did. If you want to learn any more about especially World War II history and bolt action and the historical element to it, there's lots of books. If you want early, so like the Battle of France, the book I love listening to, I don't always have time to read, so I listen on audiobooks a lot of the time, but it's Dunkirk by it's Dunkirk. I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but it will flash up on the screen now for you if you're interested. Another great option for learning about World War II history, if you haven't heard of it already, is the We Have Ways podcast. Now, I know some people are very sceptical about what they talk about and how they view it. That's fine. You know, that's what history is all about. However, what I will say is they do give a balanced view. You learn a lot of new stuff that you may not have heard before. And they delve into some of the more obscure stories of the Second World War as well. It's presented by Al Murray, the comedian / historian, and James Holland, who I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of. It's a great podcast. They interview a lot of people. They also have a festival every year. I've not yet been to. It looks fantastic though. But yeah, I would definitely check them out. I believe you can get it anywhere that you can get your podcast from. However, I get it from the Apple one on my phone. But it is great. They also have it's also on YouTube, and they also do a lot of other videos like walking the ground and stuff on their YouTube channel. I can't remember the exact name of the YouTube channel off the top of my head, but I would just type in "We Have Ways" and you'll find it. Anyway, let's move on. So that's a little bit about the Chindit section, and then it's the same for every unit that you can get for the British Army and or all your other armies. Okay, and it basically gives you a points cost. In this one, obviously you have to take them as veterans, but normally there's a different points value for it's not, you got regular, veteran, and it would be somewhere. Regular, veteran, inexperienced, there we go. I knew we'd get there in the end. It gives you a composition of each of the units, what weapons they have, and then you've also got some options. So like here, you can add up to 5 men at 16 points each to the additional 5 you've got there to make 10. The NCO and up to 1 man may replace their rifles with submachine guns for 4 points each, for example, and 1 man may have a light machine gun for 15 points. Another man then becomes the loader. Okay, so you can't just have a man running around with a Bren gun on his own. He then has to have a loader, but that can be just a normal rifleman as far as I'm aware. And then it also gives you the special rules, so like the behind enemy lines, the ambush tactics, and fieldcraft that we've already talked about. So that's kind of what the most of the book is giving you the breakdowns of all the units you can get. So you've got here like anti-tanks, and then we move on to like all the vehicles. Oh, sorry, moving the camera a bit too much, do apologise. We've got some classic Crusaders there, and it goes all the way through. You've got the British Cromwell there, and you've also got the classic Matilda. Lovely tank, love that tank. Whether I'm going to put any in is another thing. I probably will if I'm going to do more Battle of France stuff, so early war period, which I am. Do you know what, the book that I said, it is fantastic. There's also an old sort of 3-part mini docu-series that the BBC did a long time ago, again titled Dunkirk. I can't remember off the top of my head when it came out, I do apologise, but have a look for that. If you look for BBC Dunkirk, it should come up. It is great. I don't know what it is about the Battle for France. Obviously there's drama throughout the whole Second World War, but it is just so tense, and I think because it's such a short amount of time as well. Obviously you had the lead up to it, the Phoney War, but when it all kicked off, it was such a short amount of time, and the retreat was for the British and the Allies were. It was just incredible. Probably isn't the right word, but definitely tense. And I'll be honest, I'm surprised that amount of people got away from Dunkirk alone. I mean, as I said, there were, unfortunately, it's not always highlighted, but there were other evacuations. Boulogne, I would say Calais, but they got sacrificed a little bit. And you had the 51st Highland Division were going to escape. I think it was from Le Havre, I could be wrong, but again, don't quote me because I'm not a historian. Anyway, let's move on. You've got even a Churchill Avery there, fantastic. One of the painters we support painted one of those when he first came on board, and I was in love. Although how practical that is on a bolt action battlefield, I don't know. Maybe in a sort of what do you call it, like sort of story-ish, so like a scenario-based game rather than sort of just one person against another, I guess it might be better. It also gives you, let me move the camera over here, it also gives you a section on US tanks in British service. Now this is something, sorry, I'm throwing the camera about everywhere. This is something that is probably going to, this is really good, because as I'm sure a lot of you know, certainly at the beginning, we had the Matildas and a couple of cruiser tanks, but they weren't very good, and we didn't have the numbers, so we did lend-lease with the Americans, and we got a lot of their kit, and we kept, we had a lot of their kit throughout the war. It wasn't just just as before they came in, as even when they were in, we kept a lot of their vehicles, and a lot of our armoured regiments still had mainly American vehicles. So yeah, you got the section there, which is definitely worth a read through. I would go through it, however, I am aware that this video is probably going to be longer than I planned, so I do apologise. But you've got all of them there, the Shermans, right, Lee Grant. Did we have both? I didn't realise we had the Grant as well. I thought we just had the Lee, but never mind. Anyway, of course the iconic Sherman Firefly there. I'm definitely going to put one of those in my army. And yeah, it goes through everything. Anti-aircraft vehicles as well. All the armoured cars that we used, there were lots. And then we've also got, the camera here again, I do apologise, this isn't very professional, but there we go. We've also got the LRDG armoured trucks, SAS jeeps in the desert, and SAS jeeps in Europe, and we've also got the iconic carriers, lots of transports and tows, quad tractors, M5 half tracks, all of that good stuff. Yeah, no, there is lots in here. Definitely lots in here. Even landing craft there, look, which is good, because I'm sure some of you are going to want that on the battlefield. Now, the last sort of section really is, as it says on the tin, sample army. So this is what Warlord, for, it says over there, 1,500 points for a Northwest Europe army. And it basically, let me move, I do apologise, let me move the camera over so you can see it, if you haven't got a book. It basically lists everything that, I guess, what they'd put in, which fits that kind of era and place army. Now this is by the looks of it, this is obviously going to be late war, mid to late war, because obviously, well, I suppose late war really, because we weren't in Northwest Europe until then. So, and it's basically, it just gives you a rundown of what they put in, the quality. So they've put all regular in there, I guess, to be able to fit amount of that people, because obviously if you put veteran units in, it then means you have to juggle around, and you might end up losing a couple of extra other units because of the points costs there. But it's definitely worth having a look through when you're choosing to build your army. It's definitely worth having a look through and seeing whether, having veterans is great, and they can be really hard to shift on the tabletop. But if you're then losing out on say a harder hitting weapon like a tank or an anti-tank gun, it might be worth making them regular, so that you can fit in that other unit, because at the moment, as far as I'm aware from watching other YouTubers, etc., we're in I want to say a bit of a vehicle meta. Again, I could be wrong, but there we go. It gives you a British Airborne one there, so if you want to do a pure British Airborne one, I might do that at some point if I have the time. You can, so you can obviously recreate Battle of Arnhem battles and stuff like that. I mean, let's face it, that's pretty much all they're known for. Unfortunately, I mean, I think they definitely dropped in Sicily, but that was more glider, and I think they did 1 or 2 in Italy, but I could be wrong. But yeah, they didn't do very much. Commandos, on the other hand, a little bit more, but again, it's you know, it's very difficult because, you know, they did the Dieppe raid and stuff like that, but the rest of the time they were used in, it's not like today where, you know, the commandos, like one of the commando brigades, will be taken over just by a normal infantry regiment. They weren't as big, so there you go. For 1,000 points, they give you a list of what they'd put in to their commando sections, and they've also got an 8th Army one for all you desert fans out there. Of course, the iconic 8th Army, and I know there's a lot of people out there with them. So there we go. Gives you the let me move that over for you. Gives you the early, mid-war and late periods of how to, you know, select your forces and what you're going to go for. Now, personally, you know, these are 43 to 45 infantry, and okay, yeah, they're going to look slightly different, especially with submachine guns and stuff, but I'm not necessarily, right now, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't worry too much. Obviously, you're not going to be able to use submachine guns in early war. However, I'm sure if you're playing with friends and stuff, just say that they're carrying a rifle, and it's not going to make too much difference. And the uniform, slightly different, but not that different, really. Helmet's the same, less helmet coverings, but helmet's the same, rifle's the same, Bren's the same, water's the same. So you could potentially use these for all the periods. You would just obviously have to adjust your points for each person, and then it gives you the selection guide for each force, so your early war force, your mid-war force, and your late war force. Now obviously this will affect, you can't just, you know, obviously these you could probably get away with using in any period if you really wanted to, and if you were playing with friends or people that were, you know, happy for you to do so. However, you're not all going to be able to use certain tanks and artillery and bits and bobs like that in all the periods, because I can assure you now there wasn't a Sherman Firefly in the early war period, and nor was there even a Churchill, let alone a Churchill ARV or Churchill Crocodile. So again, you are going to have to take that into consideration. I'm sure you will be able to use it if you really wanted to, you know, say it's a Matilda or something rather than a Churchill, and if you're playing with friends and stuff, I'm sure that will be perfectly fine. But just bear that in mind if you do want to start going to tournaments, stuff like that. You may have to get the correct vehicle to fit your army, depending on what the tournament has set as the period of war. As far as from what I can gather, I think most tournaments are mid to late war. I haven't heard of many tournaments doing early war. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, put down in the comments if I'm wrong, because personally I'd like to know, because I'd like to do an early war game as well. And there we go. So that is the book. I think I do apologise if it's taken a bit longer, and I do apologise if for some of the camera mistakes there. But as we all know, I'm no professional at this. I do have a proper mic set up to record on a computer, but that went completely tits up halfway through this. So the audio should be okay, but again, I apologise if it's not. But anyway, I've hopefully not rambled too much. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments if I've made any mistakes, interpreted something wrong, because I'd love to learn, and I'm sure anyone new watching this video would love to learn as well. And I think that's the great thing about the hobby communities. We have people that can help people out, because rules written in there, you know, everyone's gonna, not everyone, and some of the rules, they're going to be interpreted slightly different. And I'm not saying like outrageously different, just like it's going to be interpreted slightly different. So if you know how it's played, then put it down in the comments, and just let myself and other people know. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see next. I'm probably going to start on my black powder British Napoleonic Waterloo. Not that that's the right way around for the title, but yeah, I'm going to start my Napoleonic British, I think. We've also got some podcasts coming up. Hopefully. We're going to start by interviewing some of the painters we support. So look out for those. Hopefully they'll be coming quite soon. We've just got to get them filmed and recorded, and if my mic isn't working properly, then this could be tricky. But there we go. And that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate everyone's support. If you'd like to support us even more, you can head to Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the description below. This will give you access to our Discord, where you'll be able to chat to me, all the painters that we support, and also you'll get updates on the sheep. Alternatively, you can head over to Warlord Games and purchase something. No pressure though, but please have a look to see what we sell. There's lots on there, from black powder, bolt action, and much, much more, including our new Flock and Forge range, base ready mixes. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.